And we are up and running. It is a beautiful first day of summer here in the Midwest, and we survived the solstice, which is a glorious thing. And I am very pleased to be able to chat with Kevin Rice about A Course in Miracles and how he came to the Course and what his understanding of the Course is. How are you this morning, Kevin?
I'm excellent, but I'll get better. And all is well here in West Palm Beach.
Yeah, you guys are down there in that area where the temperatures are really starting to percolate now. So hot and sweaty at West Palm Beach.
Yeah, it is. But I love living here and in Miami as well. I've been to both cities, and I consider both to be my home. So, yeah. And it's true in both cities as well.
Yeah, it's it's going to be interesting to see how the myth of global warming is going to continue to unfold. And of course, mass consciousness is creating that, but nobody wants to take responsibility, which is seems like it is a prevalent phenomenon in this current age we're in. So, Kevin, now when you first, let's go back to when you were a kid. You're growing up. I noticed that you were from Kansas City, so Midwest kid discovering life in an era when there were still fireflies on the planet, which is a magical part of summer. Give us an insight as to what your life was like as you were growing up and what you were aiming yourself for in your trajectory through life.
Well, I was very headstrong, okay, even as a young boy. So I was like 13, 14 years, and every morning I would watch maybe you can remember it or not, but I think it was called the PTL show with Jim Baker. He was a fundamentalist Christian evangelist. And
yes, and he had that delightful wife of his, Tammy Faye.
Yes, Tammy Faye. Yes. So I would watch it every morning, and I would also watch Jimmy Swaggart. Again, I was like 13, 14 years. So I really, my whole family wasn't really religious or Christian or anything like that. So I found a Baptist church and also an Assemblies of God church in Kansas City. And I brought all of my family to those places. And at the end of the day, pretty much everybody really converted to being a fundamentalist Christian, including myself. And so I did this, and I even I had TV shows at KYFC TV 50 in Kansas City, and I enjoyed it. And I was also a preacher, and from like age 16 to like 20, and then I went under the auspices of Jimmy Swaggart in Baton Rouge, and was his protege, and for like a year, at the same year that he had, I guess what people call it, a fall of grace with the prostitutes in New Orleans and so forth. And I was very discouraged by the whole thing. So I went back to Kansas City, and I went to my church in the morning, because I would go there every morning at 6 a.m. to pray with the pastors there. And I was even suicidal. I said to myself, look, I'm not experiencing the peace from God. And I was so frustrated in that pew. And I said to God in that moment, I'm done with this whole thing. And I'm leaving my ministry. I'm leaving my TV ministry as well. And God, if you want me to find the truth, then you're going to have to show it to me, because I'm done. And I left the whole thing. And I went home and I randomly picked the psychiatrist from the phone book, and I went to him. His name was Dr. James Myers in Kansas City. And I went to him and I unloaded to him for about an hour. And afterwards, he says to me, Kevin, I've never done this in my 15 years of doing counselings, but I really feel guided to give something to you. And he gave me A Course in Miracles. And I went home and I read the introduction of A Course in Miracles, and I said, oh my God, this is my book. And for like I would say 1 year, I just absorbed it completely. And I kept it quiet from my father and my mother, and didn't tell them. So I would cover it with the Bible, so they wouldn't see that I was reading A Course in Miracles. Eventually, they came to me one time as I was going through the lessons, and they said to me, hey, Kevin, something has changed within you. You're so peaceful and joyful. You know, what happened? And after months of doing this, I finally said to them, look, I really discovered A Course in Miracles. And it has really changed my life and my perspective and everything in my world. And they were not happy. They thought, oh my God, that's a cult. And nevertheless, I moved forward without their opinions and loved it. And then about a year of really reading the course, the text, the lessons, and going through everything, I began teaching it in Kansas City, I believe at Unity Temple Church on the plaza in Kansas City. And yeah, and then I was doing that for about 6 months, and then the executive vice president of Unity World Ministries came to my class and asked me to go to Unity Village. And I thought that was a cult, but I went anyway. And at that time, A Course in Miracles was banned at Unity Village and all of Unity churches. So within, I say, 3 months, Chris really, with my help, lifted the ban of A Course in Miracles from Unity. And now it's using in almost nearly every Unity church in the world is using A Course in Miracles in its classes and so forth. So yeah, that's how I discovered A Course in Miracles, Chris.
That's really amazing. Of course, you were engaged with a lot of the Bible thumpers.
Oh my God.
That idea of separating the sheep from the wolves and making sure the wolves are on the other side of the room. I remember very clearly that period when it was really proliferating, and one of the ones that was kind of a spearhead of that evangelical movement was Oral Roberts down in Oklahoma. Yeah. And he was down in Tulsa and together his university, and and then it just got stranger and stranger and stranger. And so it sounds like you were one of the ones who God had designated to a certain degree to move through life in a very accelerated fashion, because from like 15 to early 20s, that's really kind of an amazing time span to go through those people who believe in the depths of hell, and then to arise to a place where you're looking at it from a level of almost being humorous about those hellfire brimstone imagery. Now that was what, in the early 80s?
That was 1985 to 1990.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and keep in mind as well, Chris, my family that I converted to Christianity to this day are still fundamentalist Christians in Kansas City. All of them are in Kansas City. I'm the only one that left from Kansas City to come here. But they are still fundamentalist Christians. I love them and they love me, but we clearly do not see the same thing together. And one of the principles from A Course in Miracles is to accept all things as they are, not really to improve them or change them in any way. And I did that for years because I thought to myself, Chris, that they thought that I would probably go to hell or something like that. And so again, I really wanted to see the Christ within them. And so I changed my mind about them. And when I did that, after years, we were going to Israel, and my family came to me after years of studying A Course in Miracles, and they said, Kevin, we were wrong about you. And we really believe that you are here to to give a message about the Christ and love and really following the golden rule. And so we want you to know that. So they changed their minds about me, not by me changing them, but rather by changing my mind about them. And it changed. So my relationship with my family is beautiful. Again, they are still a fundamentalist Christians in Kansas City, but we love each other. We don't have to agree about everything. So it's a beautiful relationship that we have.
That's perfect. And, I think that's something that a lot of people in the Course are conflicted with, because when you start off on this journey, no matter where you are introduced to the Course at, there are going to be people who will either lose all respect and belief in you, or who will discount you as being a nut job, which is what I always try to achieve. I like being known as the local nut job.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful example of how the Course is so salient. It is a workable system, and all you have to do is take that first step, and all of a sudden you find that the world around you is starting to be altered.
Yes, it is. Can I mention one other thing, Chris, too?
Sure.
That is germane to what we're talking about. I've been with my spouse for 15 years, and he is completely uninterested in A Course in Miracles, and has been. And some of my students here in West Palm Beach have said to me, how are you in a relationship with a man who doesn't even agree with you about A Course in Miracles? And again, I reiterated to them, it's not my responsibility to change another person. And even my own spouse. However, having said that, I approached him the same I did with my family, is to accept him 100%, and being able to go beyond time and space to touch him in the eternal timeless now. And since that, he has been a supportive role in the Academy of Spiritual Awakening, #1, and even personally to me. So he has changed his principles because of that, not because I have tried to correct him in any way, but again, to accept him with a suspension of judgment. And when you do that, that's when the miracle occurs within the dream. Because you have to really recognize that #1, you're in a dream. And not only that, but you're not just a participant within the dream, but you are the dreamer of the entire dream. And when you do that, it really is easy to change the dream internally when you understand that you're the dreamer. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely does. And one of the things about that whole problem is that, you know, we are in a world where people are so conflicted with the right and the left and the Democrats, the Republicans. We've got a world that is politically in a state of absolute turmoil, and we are at a stepping off point. You know, you can hear the puppy in the background having his adventure. We'll just keep going. But this whole process of looking at the world not as being a victim of it, but as being someone who created it and therefore needs to let go of it, I think is very, very important. What other examples have you been experiencing, you know, especially recently here, because it seems like this theme is really being amped up. What other things are going on in your world where you're seeing how people are able to actually recognize what's going on and transform it?
Yes, right next to me is Mar-a-Lago, all right, where Trump resides many times throughout as he comes to Palm Beach County. And for instance, I don't talk about politics or anything like that, so I'm not going to make any statements about that. I will say, however, that my relationship, however, with Trump has to be important because, for instance, if I look at Mar-a-Lago, for instance, I have to, or Trump, or anybody, even Clinton, I have to see that what I am seeing is a reflection. It is an effect. And not only that, but it's already done and over with. So it's not my responsibility to change the mirror, but rather to really acknowledge for myself that it is an effect of my own internal thoughts. And this is true generally about any situations that we are in. If, for instance, a person doesn't like war, for instance, you really have to look at your own mind and ask yourself, look, is there a war within my own mind that I'm seeing then being projected outwardly? So again, the Course in Miracles says you have to trace the effect back to the cause. You have to, as the Taoists say as well, you have to trace the children back to the mother. So again, as you said, Chris, it's about our own responsibility. As the Course in Miracles says, I am responsible for what I see. It's not somebody else's responsibility. It's my own responsibility. And that is why A Course in Miracles is so nice and really a breath of air to really understand that everything that is happening within this world is an effect, and that I am the cause. And when I understand that, it really, again, changes the entire dream significantly. Because your relationship with everything within this world is so important to understand the principles that we are bringing to bear on every single situation, circumstance, or relationship that we are into, regardless.
Exactly. It all stems from the one dreamer, and until we're able to actually arrive at a point where we're willing to admit that we created this mess, we're pretty much going to fall over and over again into the role of victimhood. So
yep.
The Course is really the only way to transcend that, to work your way above that. Now, over the years, you were doing the Course in Miracles there at Unity in Kansas, and then eventually moving, down to Florida and stuff. Have you been able to basically make the Course in Miracles your entire career, or are you doing other things, or what's going on?
No, that is my entire calling. Yes, I years ago I had a little of a distraction from what I'm doing because of the brain surgeries I went through 10 months ago. So I had a moment to recover from that, as you have done with your situation as well. But I was in my apartment in Miami, and I, this sounds strange to you, but I'm going to say it anyway. Uh, so I was sitting there, and I had a feeling of an overwhelming love about everything, and it was so palpable. And then I heard a voice that said to me, Kevin, you need to create an online, virtual, interactive class on A Course in Miracles. So I was like, okay. And I think with that week, then I called my lawyer and I said, okay, let's call. And I really received this name as well, the Academy of Spiritual Awakening. And so I created it, a nonprofit charity as well, and a church too. I created it, and then I was asked to become the senior minister of Unity of Hollywood. And I did that for a couple of years, but I didn't want to have any conflicts whatsoever. So I put the academy on the back burner. So again, I was a little distracted by other things, but I brought it back, and that is what I'm doing every day. I'm working with my board to really bring a presence online for A Course in Miracles, because right after I heard that voice, I was skeptical. And so I said, hey, if you can give me a symbol here that this is true, let me know. And then I turned the TV on, and right when I did, Jeb Bush was online, and in that moment said, we are moving away from a physical education, but rather to a online interactive presence. And I thought, oh my God, that's exactly what I just heard. And that's what I need to do as well. So that's what I am doing. My husband works for Neiman Marcus in Palm Beach, and I am squarely focused on the Academy of Spiritual Awakening and on these kinds of conversations I'm having with my brothers and sisters. So it is so important to me about what I'm doing. I want to be about the business of God every day. So that is what I'm doing every day, and I'm enjoying it. Like, for instance, yesterday I went to Miami with board members here in West Palm Beach and met Esteban Landano in Miami to meet with him, because we're doing a lot of workshops, and I'm doing a lot of sermons here at churches in Florida. And so, yeah, we're very busy, and I really am experiencing joy in doing that. You know, I think I remembered a statement from A Course in Miracles that says, all pleasure comes from doing God's will. And so that is my very first priority, that is foremost in my mind every day.
That's perfect. And, I'm talking to a lot of people who are abandoning other pursuits in life and really zeroing in on the Course. And so it does seem like our community is going through like a secondary level of evolution. It's opening up and expanding. But, going back to that idea of unity, having banned the Course and then eventually doing a 180, another organization that I was very familiar with, I had studied Christian Science, and that was a very strong theme in my life for a long time. And then all of a sudden in the mid-90s, a lot of Christian Science churches, especially, like the Mother Church in New York City, started to pick up A Course in Miracles. So it seems like a lot of these organizations where they were already vectored in that direction of a non-denominational and perhaps more clinical approach to spirituality rather than this religious, all of the dogma and all of the trappings of bloody crosses and, burning bushes, all of the darker sides of Christianity. It seems like they are the ones now who have become unconsciously one of the greatest voices for Course and introducing the Course philosophy. So you're very much in tune with what's going on with Unity. How are they doing overseas? How is Unity and its Course projects developing in, let's say, the Philippines or Europe or whatever?
Well, I'm aware of Europe. I know that in England and France and Germany and Israel as well are very enthusiastic about Unity and A Course in Miracles. So both, they are as passionate about it as we are. And, there are a lot of, in the past, before we lifted the ban, for instance, a lot of Unity ministers felt like A Course in Miracles was a threat to their own development, which was actually quite a mistake to think about this, because it was wrong. And they understood at the board level of Unity that they were being too exclusive and they needed to be more inclusive. And so when they banned A Course in Miracles, it was based on fear, and they understood this. So they had their own egoic development that they needed to rid themselves of it and really be more, as their church is called, Unity, to be more inclusive about everything. And so I think that their relationship with A Course in Miracles is wonderful. And I think that it is very rare to find a Unity church that might have some disagreeable moments of A Course in Miracles. One of them here in South Florida, I won't mention its name, but again, it's very rare. And I think that Unity fully embraced A Course in Miracles, because the principles within A Course in Miracles really aligns itself closely with the principles of Unity. It's really one. I mean, it has few disagreements between them, what we believe and so forth. Yeah.
Very cool. Now, I've heard you mention Israel a couple of times there. So what do you think of that region and, it being the melting pot of the source of the Abrahamic traditions? We've got the Jews and we've got the Arabs and we've got the Christians all there getting frustrated over the Dome on the Rock and the Sea of Galilee and all of these different shrines and structures that are designed to reinforce that idea that, Abraham had two sons and there was some skullduggery and one stole another one's gift from his father. And, that whole vision that comes from that fundamental level, it still seems to be a very live ethic in that region. What was your experiences in Israel, and are you going back to Israel?
Well, my mother, who passed away about 3 years ago, always wanted to go to Israel. And so I would go with her, and I would always bring A Course in Miracles with me. and I'm a very people person. And so I would engage everybody. And I really was steeped well in Judaism, as well as Christianity, and even Islam. So I knew all of them. And I think that when we approach any relationship, and the ingredient for me is when people engage me about it and they want to ask questions and so forth, and I can respond, and with love and courtesy and respect and so forth. So I've talked to many rabbis and people in Israel about this, and they're very open-minded about it. Now, with respect to the forces from Christianity, Islam, and Judaism that is coalesced in the Middle East, you know, when you mention that, immediately I'm reminded in A Course in Miracles that says that Adam fell into a sleep, and nowhere in the Bible does he say that he ever woke up from that. And I have to remind myself about what happened in the Middle East, and essentially, you know, I don't want to judge anybody or attack anybody either, but I can opine about when somebody is asleep and not awake. And so when religions can collectively and individually go to sleep, it's because they focus on form and not on content. Because you mentioned how people refer to the Middle East as the holy place. Look, that's nothing more than specialness. And, you know, nothing is holy because everything is holy.
And I am continuing our conversation with Kevin Rice, who is very much involved in a lot of different projects with A Course in Miracles, and we had just had some dialogue about the Middle East. But now I'm thinking about introducing another idea here to see what your take on it is, Kevin, and that would be, where does God stop? In other words, we perceive God to be the source that animates mankind, but there also is the animal kingdom, and we've got flora and fauna out there, and we've got the mineral kingdom. So how do we look at an expanded vision of that's inclusive of all these different ways that life is appearing to manifest?
Well, keep in mind that, number one, we are in a dream. So we have to remember that what we are discussing is illusions, number one. And because of that, you know, a dream state is really the only venue in which an illusion can be afforded reality. And that is why dreams are created. And so, you know, we can talk about the animal kingdom and so forth, but, you know, I guess the question is the individual and singular ego within my body real here? Because the only time that we are really close with heaven is us attaching ourselves to our identity of who we really are. And what we want to undo is the error called the ego, the voice of fear that brought about separation. So to answer your question about animals and so forth, yeah, it's an extension of who we are, and we are one with it. The question is, do we see it from a premise of creation or miscreation? So let me just talk to you a little bit about miscreation. The moment that I enter into a violent modality. Is the moment that I see you as separate from me and me from you, and us as separate from God. So the moment that there is a subject, Kevin Rice, and an object called Chris, is the moment that we are entering into the separation. So through forgiveness from A Course in Miracles is when we remove those divisions between us. The only, right now, we are exchanging molecules with each other, with the guys and girls around us, and we are exchanging molecules. And the moment that we entertain judgment of any kind, then we are asleep. And because we have given our attention to an illusion called the separation. So there is no subject and object here. That's a pure illusion. It's part of the dream. So yeah, it is an illusion. Yes. However, we should respond to it as though it is real. Because if we are miscreating within this dream, we are deepening it. We don't want to keep it asleep. When we tether ourselves instead to creation, we can extend happiness and joy and peace to the world by carrying that peace to the world. But we're not going to accomplish that the moment that I perceive for even a second that you and I are separate from each other, that there is a subject and an object here, and there isn't. We are one. And that is the purpose of A Course in Miracles. So, again, to answer once again about the animal kingdom, yeah, it's part of the dream that we have created or miscreated. And how we respond to the animal kingdom, for instance, is how we should respond to our fellow human beings in this plane, with love, with forgiveness, and no judgment whatsoever. So that's how I've got a dog here as well, Chris, Leo. He's a French bulldog. Boy, I treat him as myself. When he had a PTSD, I would hold him and I said, "What's going on here, Leo? You're having a call to health here. And I'm here to give to you what you really want, which is the kingdom, is reality." And, he recovered quickly because of that. So again, the question is really, what is our response to what we are seeing? Does that make sense?
That makes absolute sense. Yes, that's pretty much a good encapsulation of that whole concept of there being something outside of ourselves.
Right.
But we have, projected all of these things into the universe, into the world, and it just keeps going and going and going. UFOs and alien contact and beings and all of these different things. But ultimately, it's you or me or the I appearing in infinite form and fashion. And that's what we're trying to do, is to bring ourselves back to recognizing there's only one self that is actually here. Well, now, when you're communicating with people who are completely oblivious to the Course, who have never had any kind of exposure to it, who are raised in, fundamental Christian, fundamental Islam, fundamental Buddhism, whatever, when they approach you and ask you about it, how do you introduce the bigger vision of A Course in Miracles to somebody who has absolutely no clue as to what you're talking about?
Jesus really gave the formula of how to do this. First of all, with courtesy, with respect. How I I treat other people, I will treat myself. How I think about other people, I will think about myself, and so forth. So I'm not really communicating with somebody who is at their bottom, at their core, is broken. Okay, any or in a need of correction, for instance. So yes, I can communicate with love from a premise of unity, of oneness, of reality. But you really have to ask yourself, and I do counselings a lot, and when I'm in that conversation with that person, I have to really understand that we are equal. I'm not better than they are at all. And this is true as well with Christians or Muslims or Jews as well. We are on a level playing field. So if I understand that, it makes my interaction with that person really sacred. And first of all, and secondly, I would every single time ask for help from Jesus, our source, whatever you want to call it, and saying, help me to help my brother. What would you have me do? What would you have me say? Where would you have me go? And that's from the lessons of A Course in Miracles. So I'm asking for assistance. And when I ask for that assistance, that help comes immediately and helps what could be a tortured conversation with a fundamentalist Christian, for instance, could be a beautiful and loving and respectful exchange with that person. So that's how I really approach differently to everyone in the world. Again, it would be the golden rule, that you love others as you want to be loved. And of course, you have to include that as well, loving your God as well. So as long as you are aware of that, I think then you are awake and you're not asleep. And thirdly, if somebody believes in the separation, if somebody is engaged in the game of war or battle, they're asleep. They're completely asleep. So it's not my responsibility to judge them, because all they're doing is sleeping, okay? And I can give them a device, a miracle, if you will, within the dream to help them wake up from that sleep. That is the purpose of A Course in Miracles. That is the device given to us by the Holy Spirit to help us to wake up. Something from outside of time and space has come into time and space to say to us, wake up, and this is the way you can awaken. And this is why A Course in Miracles is a process of changing what we believe is a dream of suffering to a gentle way of transforming it to a happy dream. So the purpose of A Course in Miracles is not to wake up entirely, because that would reinforce fear in many people. The purpose of the curriculum of A Course in Miracles is to gently transform that dream of suffering to a happy dream. And then the Course says, God then takes the last step, waking us to our reality of who we are as a child of the light and a child of truth.
So basically you're saying that there really isn't a way to reduce the Course to a capsule and just hand it out to everybody you encounter, that it is very much a case-specific situation, and you have to be guided by the Holy Spirit.
That is true, because we are not without a present help in times of need. So that is true. You know, one statement from A Course in Miracles does sum it up. Salvation is nothing more than the recognition that what was never true is not true now and never will be, that the impossible has not occurred. So, yes, I can put it in a capsule for people, but that's going to bring too much fear initially. Yeah, I know that this is true. I know what the salvation of the world needs. But I'm not here to enforce in any way fear, because most people who are asleep do not want to be awakened um, instantly. They want to become aware of reality gently, with love and not with fear. So that's very mindful to know that when you are interacting with other people. So, you know, if I meet a Course in Miracles student, however, and they want help, yeah, I can give them the capsule. Hey, you know, we know what salvation is here. The past is over, and with its passing, the drive of vengeance is uprooted and will disappear. I can say that to a student who understands the principles within A Course in Miracles and say, hey, come on, we're one here. And you're not wrong, and I'm not angry, but this is what A Course in Miracles tells us to do. This is what Jesus tells us to do. And yeah, that reminder, I do that almost every week with my students. I'm very direct with them and authentic. But with a person who's unaware of A Course in Miracles, I have to be gingerly with them, gentle with them. I'm not here to force my belief system to anyone else. The primary responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept the atonement for himself. That's my only job. So,
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Um, and how about outside influences that came along for you? Let's go back and look at that time period when you first encountered A Course in Miracles and then started to actually study it. And did you find that there were certain writers or certain people out there who were communicating about the Course that helped you gain a deeper understanding of the passages within the Course, or did you just rely on the Holy Spirit and your relationship with the divine?
well, let me just say that I tend to really absorb a book when it is being presented to me. I've been a kind of student like that way all my life, that I will go home and devour a book, and until I know it, I will not close it. And so I think that my initial experience with A Course in Miracles, because it felt so holy and sacred. I mean, it was unreal. It was surreal. And so I just went through it. But there was influences, quote unquote, external. The first one would be Marianne Williamson. And I've had dinner with her here in Florida with her, and I knew her in Kansas City as well. So she was important. I don't always agree with her, and that's fine. You know, I don't agree with everybody either. So, but what she offered to the public was very helpful. Oprah was also helpful. So was Gary Sukoff, The Seed of the Soul, and the Dancing Wooly Masters. He wrote a book about that. I was very steeped in the Bible, for instance. So I would go through the Bible and really pick things out that was in alignment with the Course in Miracles. And that was beautiful. So I really used a lot of stimuli to help us assist myself through the curriculum. But I guess the single thing that assisted me was the lessons, doing them every day. And I probably have done them like 15 times already. And I do them with my students here in West Palm Beach. But that reminder is what we need every day. And if we don't have that reminder, we're going to forget why we're here, where we came from, and where we're going. So those reminders are extremely important. You know, we want to be, quote unquote, a disciple of the Christ, but we have to have somewhat discipline in our approach to life, especially the principles within A Course in Miracles. We don't want to be experiencing mind wandering as Bill and Helen experienced many, many times through this process as well.
Yeah, we're definitely at a much higher evolutionary plateau with the Course than we were 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And as a result of the internet now, we've got the potential to communicate with an infinite number of people throughout the world. So it seems like everything was precisely planned. It seems like the Course came into being at the right time in the 60s and 70s so that it could get its footing in the 80s and 90s. And then as we moved into 2005, 2010, all of a sudden there's this true blossoming that's going on. But I still, on social media, et cetera, I see people who are getting into squabbles about the meaning of A Course in Miracles on some of these sites. So what do you do when you see somebody out there smashing into somebody else and saying, you're wrong and I'm right and all of this stuff? What's your response to argumentative dialogue about the Course?
Then you're on a battlefield. You're at war. You think you're at war with another person. I'm not talking about you, Chris. I'm just talking about everybody.
Right.
You're not at war with somebody else. You're at war with yourself. And I'll give you an example. Helen Schuckman, as she was scribing A Course in Miracles, she had a moment where she became, in her profession, very based upon competition. And she thought that competition was against the other associates that she was working with. And then she was in communication with Jesus and said, no. You're not at war with other people. You are at war with yourself. And when Helen understood that, then that drive for competition began to dissolve. And so I think that the point is you're either on a battlefield or you're not. And if you're on a battlefield, a war with the world, then you not only believe in the notion of separation, but you are further deepening that separation by engaging in the tools of separation, the tools of blaming, of victim, and so forth. So this is really a process of becoming aware of your own psyche and how you really go into dark periods in your life, and you're not even aware that you are doing it to yourself. So that is the point, I would say. I'll give you another example, Chris. I have a friend here who is what I consider to be a miracle mafia. They're into being in war with fellow students of A Course in Miracles. What I did from Unity Village when I was there, right after the ban of A Course in Miracles was lifted, students would argue about a lesson, and I would bring the book up. I said, what lesson are you disagreeing about? And they would say, oh, lesson 75. And I would take it, and I would take that page and rip it off of the book and throw it away. Why? Because this is a course in content and not in form of any kind. So when we engage with a charge with it, it's not helpful to ourselves or others. And I think that the purpose of A Course in Miracles is to say to all of us, when we banter, when we engage in insults and so forth, then we are in a battle, a war, and we need to drop the swords. We need to drop the weapons, and we're never ever going to experience peace unless we do that. And this is why extreme forgiveness is necessary in the curriculum. I loose the world from all I thought it was. To me, that is what forgiveness is. As I said to you previously, in one of the notes from Helen Schuckman as well, Jesus said to her, the past is gone, and with its passing, the drive for vengeance is uprooted and will then disappears. And that's how we really understand that war. Does that make sense, Chris?
Yeah, it's very much right on point. One of my favorites out of the course lessons is, I am not a victim of the world I see. So if I'm seeing something in the world around me that causes me to be alarmed or defensive, or to just overall lose my composure, then I know that I'm allowing myself to slide back into that idea of being a victim. And I think that really is one of the core tenets of the course, is that constant indulgence of the ego. And the ego's big litany is, you're the victim, you're going to get hurt, everything's going to fall apart, you're doomed.
If anybody were militant about their belief in A Course in Miracles, that does not help anybody. That again deepens the war. So you always know, and I think, Chris, you're aware of it as well, that when people are more militant in their conversations on groups and Course in Miracles, you know what is happening. You don't have to judge it. You don't have to evaluate it, but you don't have to play the game that they want to bring you into the battle too. And that's when you just have to say from A Course in Miracles, peace to such foolishness.
Right. You just take that step back and not allow yourself to engage, because then it's like a dog chasing its tail. You just go around and around and around, and you stop your forward progress. Well, now, do you do, I mean, you do a lot of things there in Florida, down in the tip of the region there, but do you get out and present at various groups and meetings? And do you have anything coming up on your schedule that you're going to be engaged in?
In fact, I was just at Unity on the Bay in Miami on May 21st, and I was at 9 and 11 and did a workshop afterward, and I can send you the video of it. So yeah, in Miami. The next one is at Unity of Stewart, which is just north here in West Palm Beach. And then Reverend Susan Stone and Reverend Esteban Londano, who is working with me under the Academy, is going through the organizations throughout Florida first to do really three things. One, I am delivering A Course in Miracles. Then Susan, after me, talks about what is called Psyche, which is really a way of determining how your body and your emotions and everything interplay with the Course in Miracles by understanding the subconscious. So she really, because the Course in Miracles is dealing with the conscious mind, and what she is addressing is the subconscious mind. And then Esteban will deal with this hypnosis, essentially. So we do those three facets to bring to people because nobody else is doing that. Because it really accelerates the teaching of A Course in Miracles when you address the subconscious as well. This is what Dr. Carl Jung says, that enlightenment is not about imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And the subconscious is the darkness. And so when we make it conscious, boy, it becomes immediate to us. And that's why our approach is going to make it accelerated in an individual's experience. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and that's interesting because do you have anything online as far as a video around that hypnotic process, the process of hypnosis, to perhaps give people a little taste of what's going on there?
We did, and in fact, yesterday, Susan and I went to Miami to meet with Esteban, and we did a video on this experience that I'm talking with you about right now. And yeah, we did the video, and I hope to have it up so I can send it to you, and we have a flyer that goes along with that. So yeah, I will send it to you. But yeah, it's a phenomenal teaching that we are adding to A Course in Miracles to, again, accelerate a person's experience of it. So yes.
That's perfect. And how about getting outside of Florida? Are you guys taking it on the road anytime?
I have. I was in Chicago, actually, at your home. I was there for the conference, and I also went to New York and did the conference there as well. And also in St. Louis, I did a all-day event there with their group in St. Louis, and that was beautiful. And I've got other invitations to join them, and I'm doing that. But I don't want to push the river too much. I have to become aware that, yeah, I did go through two brain surgeries, a subdural hematoma. And so in that process, I really have to be mindful, because if I have too much activity or stimuli, you know, I can probably do like 4, 5, 6 hours a day. But more than that, my brain from moment to moment will just stop. You know, I can't even speak. So I have to be aware of that. And again, I don't want to be too hard on myself either, because I have a tendency to be hard on myself. I have to be easy about it, and I am. So yeah, I do a lot of speaking, and I want to be in Kansas City again, and I love Chicago. So I want to come back to Chicago and teach again.
That would be awesome, because there are a plethora of places in Chicago that I could introduce you to for all sorts of amazing experiences. It's quite an enriched community here.
Oh, I know. It's beautiful.
So if people want to follow you, connect with you, see more of what you're doing, give us some resources here, some websites, etc., where people can track you down.
You can, first of all, a couple of things, actually. The first thing is the Academy of Spiritual Awakening.org. That is our website. and you can watch the events that is happening here in West Palm Beach. We record our class every Thursday night, and then we put it back onto the website so they can watch it not only just on the Facebook Live, but as well on YouTube as well. So that's under A Course in Miracles in our website. And there's other videos there as well. People can connect with me through Facebook here and send me a friend request. I've got about like 300 or 400 spaces available because I'm almost to 5,000, and that's the limit. So if they want to do that, they need to do it quickly. And yeah, I mean, those two, YouTube, Facebook Live, and our website is our three main ways to connect with us.
Great. Well, in kind of a summation mode here, as a last thought, a parting idea, what would you offer me and the listeners, the observers here, as your final adieu for this this broadcast?
The word observer that you just mentioned, that there is no observer here, that we are one, that how I approach you, as I have been with Chris, you with Chris, is to do it again gingerly and gently, because you really know when you meet a person who is in alignment with your own teaching from A Course in Miracles. You can connect with it, and it's nice. So I guess the statement I would give to people is to understand that we are one. And you know, I'm not a big fan of the Bible, but I do from time to time use it because it is helpful. But I was just reminded of that story where a lawyer went up to Jesus and said, "What do I need to do to live forever?" And Jesus said, "What does the prophet say? What does the law say?" And the lawyer said that we should love God with all of our heart, soul, and strength, and to love others as we want to be loved. And Jesus responded by saying, "Do this, and you will live forever." This is exactly what A Course in Miracles wants us to know as well. This is the simple way of removing the separation. And this is why Jesus knew this, and why he implanted into our minds the golden rule. So that is what A Course in Miracles is. That is what most of the religions in the world teaches as a tenet. A fundamental foundation of their teaching is the golden rule. Because when I love you as I love myself and treat you like I want to treat myself, that is when the separation and the lines and the divisions begin to disappear. And we begin to have an experience of unity and of oneness and of love.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. And I'll finish up editing the video and send you the link when it's up and running.
Okay, and I'll put it on the website and our website onto Facebook as well. So thank you.
Great. Well, you have a great evening. I'll talk to you soon.
You as well. Thank you.
Okay.